my friends of Facebook and YouTube, the World Cup is here, which means that's all I'm going to be thinking and talking about for the next month. First of all, to my YouTube friends, sorry it's been like a year since I've last done a video. I don't know what happened. I just couldn't think of any video subject matter, really. Ran up against the old creative wall. So hopefully I'll get better at that. As for Facebook friends who didn't even know I had a YouTube profile, guess what? I do. I make videos once every year, as you can now find out. But anyway, I did a bunch of like World Cup previews 4 years ago, and like they were like really pretentious and snobby and pretty inaccessible generally. So instead of that, I want to just do like I guess just sort of casual rundown, kind of off the cuff, in like a video form. So anyway, the World Cup, right? It's in Brazil, the birthplace of the beautiful game, if you will. There's all kinds of talk about, there's political strikes, man, and people are all pissed off in Brazil, and yeah, that is an element to it, and I don't want to like brush that over, but I'm like such a World Cup fanatic fan that I'm like willfully ignorant of it, basically. So like I hope that they can make enough money off of this to build the hospitals and public works that people are so pissed off about, but I don't really want to talk about that. I'm just pretending that's not happening. So the World Cup, right? I'll do a quick rundown of all the groups, how I think teams are going to fare, and things to look out for, personal predictions, etc. First of all, Group A. We've got Brazil, Croatia, Cameroon, and Mexico. Brazil, there's a lot of talk about how when Brazil are supposed to perform really well at the World Cup, they always choke, but it's when a Brazilian team goes to the World Cup, i.e. 2002, and everybody thinks, this Brazilian team is shitty, that's when they go and win it. I think the expectations are pretty high for Brazil this time around. Who knows what that could mean? The one intangible is that, of course, it's on home soil, and that makes a difference. That really does make a difference. So, yeah, I think they'll do fairly well. They should get out of Group A pretty easily and shouldn't have too much trouble. It's a Brazilian team that's kind of lacking in like huge stars in the way that, like 2006 we had Ronaldinho. Everybody was just shitting their pants about Ronaldinho. There's Neymar Jr. and he's by far the team's highest profile player. He's good. I don't know. Anyway, Brazil should win this group without too much difficulty. They're facing off against Croatia later today. Croatia are terrible. I don't think they'll do particularly well. They've sent good teams to the World Cup in the past, but this is not as good as those teams. I think if I recall correctly, there's like questions about injuries to Mario Mandzukic, who's their number one striker. And if there are problems with Mandzukic, you wonder where Croatia are going to find goals. They've got Modric in the midfield, and he's one of my favorite players. But it's not a Croatia team that's going to light the world on fire. And I think they're going to get crushed by Brazil later today. I think this could be a 3 or 4-0 style drubbing that they're in for. The other teams in the group, we have Mexico. If it's possible to be worse than Croatia, and it absolutely is, Mexico without a doubt are. They're awful right now. This is probably the worst Mexican team that's been to the World Cup in, I don't know, probably in my lifetime. So I don't think they're going to do particularly well. Players of note, none really. Again, this is a Mexican team that had to go to a playoff because they finished 4th in North American qualifying. They're abysmal. I doubt they'll win a game. If they can nick a draw, good for them. Cameroon is the last team rounding out that group. I like Cameroon quite a lot. Samuel Eto'o is their star player. He's like 49 years old or something at this point. He's not the sort of youthful athletic talent that we used to know of him as, but One of the things that I always liked about Etu when he played for Inter, which is my big European club, was how intelligent he is. Very, very intelligent, great vision for the game. He knows how to find space in defenses. Technically, he's very, very skilled, and he shouldn't have lost any of that ability. The player for me, though, is Eric Choupo-Moting. He's an attacking midfielder, and I just have a gut feeling that this could be a breakout tournament for him, and I actually like Cameroon to get out of the group. Okay, this video is going to be super long, so I'm going to try and not talk about details as much. Next group is Group B. We've got Holland, Spain, Australia, and Chile. A lot of people think that this is sort of a three-way group, that any combination of Holland, Spain, and Brazil could go through. Or not Brazil. Holland, Spain, and Chile can go through. I am skeptical about that. Not to shit on Chile, but they're not as good as Holland and Brazil. Brazil. They're not as good as Holland and Spain. Holland and Spain should make it out of this group easily. I think it's going to be Spain, Netherlands, Chile, and Australia in that order. It's a straightforward group as far as I'm concerned. There's that first game in the group tomorrow between Spain and the Netherlands. It could be quite a good game. I think Spain are going to win, though. I don't think there's anything interesting about it. Next group, Group C, which is the so-called group of life, as my idol Alexi Lawless puts it. God, what a twat. He's seriously the dumbest motherfucker on the planet. Anyway, sorry to diss you if you watch this, Alexi. Actually, I'm not sorry. You're a retard. We've got Ivory Coast. We've got Colombia. We have got Japan. And we've got Greece. Colombia are the seeded team in this group. They should win it. They're missing Radamel Falcao, who is just an incredible player. I'm a little bit baffled as to why he went to Monaco a year ago in the off season. But anyway, they're missing him because he's not fit. He's hurt. So that could dampen their chances. I think they'll still get out of the group easily. I just don't think they'll beat whoever they play in the round of 16. And that would be a Group D team, and we'll get to that in a second. Other teams in this group, Greece, you know what? Greece, it has been 10 years now since Greece won Euro 2004. And I feel like people haven't stopped talking about it in terms of like, oh, Greece, man, you never know what's going to happen. They could come out of nowhere and do some shit. No, okay, like, it was a completely random result. You had a Greece team that was like just in remarkably good form in 2004, and they managed to pull off a ridiculous Cinderella upset. That does not mean they're going to do it again. I think they're going to lose every game in this group. 4 years ago, I sort of was wondering if Greece might do okay. I think they were in the group with South Korea and Argentina and Nigeria, if I remember correctly. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, oh, they might get out of this group. That's possible. No, they were horrible. They were so defensive. It didn't look like they were even interested in scoring a goal. So my guard is up. I don't think Greece are going to do anything. I think they're going to be awful. So Colombia get through, Greece don't, which means one more team goes through, and that's either Ivory Coast or Japan. Ivory Coast, they've sent great teams to the World Cup in the past and gotten fucked over by a really, really difficult draw. This is a workable draw, but the problem is now they're too old. All their best players are way past their prime. Didier Drogba, who, is their talismanic player. It's another Samuel Eto'o situation. He's like 56 years old or something. I'm obviously exaggerating. He's not, whatever. Look it up. So I think it's a shame Ivory Coast probably won't get out of this group, just as like they haven't gotten out of their groups at the last couple World Cups. Their team just isn't as good as it was anymore. And not to take anything away from Japan, who I think are the second team that'll come out of Group C, because I think Japan are actually a really good team. Yoshikazu Suzuki Lambrecht, I'm looking at you, buddy. That's my man. I remember Yoshi was telling me, like, oh, dude, I saw the draw for the World Cup, and it looks really tough. And I remember thinking, and I might have even told him just straight up, like, dude, why are you even worried? Japan should get out of this group easily. And I stand by that. I really think Japan should get out of this group. They've got great attacking players. Honda, Kagawa. I don't think Japan will have any problem getting out of this group, although, again, they're going to face the problem that Colombia will in terms of... Sorry, it's windy out here. It's shaking the laptop around. I think they're going to have trouble getting any farther than the round of 16 because they're going to have to play someone from Group D, which I'm about to speak of right now. Group D, we've got England, Costa Rica, Uruguay, and Italia. You know what? Like, England are always going to the World Cup and, like, the expectations are way too high for them. Like, I remember 2006 when it was like David Beckham was captaining that team, and everybody was like, "Oh, mate, this is the best England team we've sent to the World Cup since 1960, whatever." You know, and it was just like all this hyperbole, and England were just shit. They got beat in, what was it, the quarterfinals? Yeah, it was that penalty shootout against Portugal where they got beat. They were very unimpressive. And they weren't particularly good 4 years ago at the 2010 World Cup either. Having said that, I like this England team quite a lot. It's like the youngest team at the World Cup, or maybe like the second youngest team. I think Raheem Sterling is a player to watch for all you Liverpool fans out there. He's a great player. He's had a great year in the Premier League. I think that's going to absolutely continue at the World Cup. I like England to win this group, and I like them to win this group pretty easily, actually. As for who is going to finish second, it's got to be either Uruguay or Italy. I think it's going to be Italy. No disrespect to Uruguay, but that was kind of a lucky result they got 4 years ago, and I don't think their team's as good. I think they have one excellent player, another Liverpool player, incidentally, and that's Luis Suarez. He might be the best player in the world, actually. I think you could really make a legitimate argument for Luis Suarez is better than Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. But it's all academic as far as a World Cup perspective because no one else on the Uruguayan team is any good. I think Italy are the team that finishes second in Group D. You know what? Italy could send a team of like 16-year-old youth academy players and they would still have a chance to win the World Cup because they're just one of those teams that no matter how bad they are, they always manage to excel. Typically they start very slow, which is another reason I think they'll lose to England in the opening match in Group D. But they always seem to finish well. The exception being 4 years ago when they got dumped out in the group stage. I don't think that's going to happen this time around. I think Italy make it out of this group, and I actually think they could go quite deep in the tournament. Okay, so that's the first half of the bracket. How are we looking here? Holy shit, 13 minutes. This is going to be a half-an-hour video, folks. Hope you brought some coffee. So next up we have Group E. This is France, Switzerland, Honduras, and Ecuador. This group is awful. Really weak group, with the exception of France, who I like quite a lot. Switzerland, I'll start off with them. You know, like Switzerland has followed the exact same formula for every one of the last 29 World Cups, which is to send a team that's like fairly promising, that's got some good players, and then just put like 10 men behind the ball, be like super defensive, super conservative, don't take any chances, be boring as fuck. I thought it was kind of fun 4 years ago when they beat Spain, which, I don't know, it was just an upset that I was amused by. But then, of course, they failed to get out of that group, so it didn't matter in the end. I'm not impressed by them this year either. If they get out of the group, which I don't think they will, well, maybe they will. I don't know. Whatever. Then there is Ecuador. To be honest, I don't know a lot about this Ecuador team. I know that they qualified more or less the way they always qualify for the World Cup, which is to win all their home games in qualifying because they're like at 1.5 miles above sea level. And then they didn't win away from home in all of qualifying. So that's not a good sign because you can't. We're not playing the World Cup in Ecuador, guys. We're really not. I know you want to play the World Cup in Ecuador. Maybe in like 2098, but no. So Ecuador are going to stink. Honduras, that's another team that is probably going to be pretty horrible. I was reading a bunch of stuff online, and there's a whole bunch of people who are like, Honduras, man, they're going to be like the surprise package at this World Cup. And it's like, I'm not saying they're not going to get out of this group, because it's a pretty easy group. But there's nobody of any real class on that team. They've got, who do they have? Palacios. He's the only guy I can think of, to be honest. There's just no really good players. It's mostly rounded out by like MLS players. So like, meh. France are going to win this group easily, and this is actually a really good France team. Yeah, I know that 4 years ago they were like the worst team in the history of organized sports. That's more or less true, actually. Not in addition to being terrible on the field, there was all kinds of problems off the field. All the players hated each other. The only thing they hated more than each other was their manager, Raymond Domenech, who's... I'm not even making this up. He's like into astrology and shit. He like made decisions about which players to pick for his teams based on like horoscopes. I shit you not. This is 100% true. Look it up. Raymond Domenech, former France manager. This is 100% true. And the guy won a World Cup in '98 too. I have no idea how that happened. But anyway, they fired his dumb ass. They've got a much better situation now. I quite like France, actually. They'll win this group handily, and I kind of am leaning towards France to win the World Cup. I really am. You heard it here first. Group F. So we've got Argentina in this group. We've also got Iran, Nigeria, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have to confess something. I think that Argentina are not that good. I'm sorry. I know everyone just loves Messi. I know that Di Maria is supposedly like this great player. I have watched the World Cup every time since like 2002. So I've watched 3 World Cups now, which admittedly is not as many as other people have watched. But I'm familiar with Argentina's recent World Cup history. And they always put on, like, if they have at least one game where they just trample the shit out of somebody. They win like 8-0 or something. And everybody for a few days is like, oh my God, Argentina are so good, they're going to win it. And then they always find a way to blow it. They always find a way to choke. I heard on the Guardian podcast a little nugget of fact. Argentina haven't beaten anybody in the knockout stage of the World Cup and not won it on penalties, I should clarify. They haven't beaten anybody they haven't won a game proper in the knockout stage, other than Mexico, since, what was it, 1986? No, 1994? I don't know, but it was sometime since like the early 90s or late 80s. It's been a long-ass time since Argentina have been successful. And I actually, I'm not actually sure that they're going to put on a good performance. This is a team that is so reliant on Messi, and there is so much pressure on him to perform well in Brazil, which are Argentina's traditional rivals. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of how much pressure there was on Messi when Barcelona wanted to get to the Champions League final back in 2010, because it was at Real Madrid Stadium, Barcelona and Real Madrid obviously being like arch enemies. And Barcelona had this big, huge culture war thing about how, we're going to go to the Bernabeu, which is Real Madrid Stadium, and we're gonna beat those fuckers on their home turf. Of course, Real Madrid were out of the tournament, but they still wanted to win at the Bernabeu, and I don't know, it was this weird Barcelona thing. And then they choked in the semifinal. They couldn't get to the final. There was so much pressure on them to obtain this goal of showing up their traditional enemies. They just blew it. And I'm kind of reminded of that when I look at this Argentine team, which is so reliant on Messi. And 4 years ago, you look at that team, Messi didn't even do that well. He really didn't perform necessarily that well. He's great for Barcelona. I still have serious questions about how Messi fits into the Argentina national team. It's a completely different team than Barcelona. And I don't think he's as good as a player. I think Argentina will get out of this group, but I don't think they'll win it. I'm dead serious. I don't think they're going to win this group. Bosnia are a team that a lot of people are sort of thinking about as dark horses, and it's possible. This is not an impossible group to get out of. They don't have any really great players aside from Edin Dzeko, who's their number. Sorry if it's hard to hear because of the wind. Bosnia and Herzegovina have Edin Dzeko, who's a pretty good number 9. Okay, the wind's dying down. So he's a pretty good attacker, and he should score some goals. He's one of the few out-and-out center forwards at this World Cup who's not injured. Aside from Josie Altidore. So anyway, Bosnia I like their chances quite a lot. There's also Nigeria, and this is again, no big stars on this team, but you never know. They do have an excellent goalkeeper, whose name is Vincent Anyema. His name came to me right on time. Excellent goalkeeper, and you know what they always say, if you have a good goalkeeper, you can beat teams that are far, far beyond your stature. So, Nigeria, maybe. They might get out of this group. The team that I'm looking at, though, in Group F is Iran. I think Iran is an interesting team. Apparently, there was this, bunch of investors that are, paid to make, really accurate predictions, and they can't fuck it up, because otherwise the global economy will crash. 2008! Sorry, I have a cold. But apparently they have Iran getting out of this group, and Iran are managed by Carlos Queiroz, who's a Portuguese manager with a pretty good reputation. So I actually like Iran to get out of this group, maybe even win it. I think they'll fail to beat Argentina, but I think they'll also beat Bosnia and Nigeria. I think Iran will get out of this group. Might even win it if my prediction about Argentina going balls up turns out to be true. I don't know. It's a really, really out there aggressive prediction, but we'll see. Group G. Who gives a shit about this group? Man, what a bunch of shitty teams here. Obviously, that's a joke because this is the group of death. You have Ghana, you have Germany, you have Portugal, and as you can tell from my accent, my beloved United States of America. A lot of people are talking about how this is the group of death. Any combination of two teams could get out of this group. First of all, let's squash that by saying Ghana are pretty horrible, and I don't think they're going to get out of this group. Obviously, Ghana have emerged from their group at the last 2 World Cups. A lot of people really like them. The problem is this is not that Ghana team. Michael Essien, who is sort of their talismanic center midfielder workhorse. Is he even in the team? I'm actually not sure if he's even in the team. If he is, he's too old to be in the team. So you wonder where the really class players are going to come from. And this group is just too hard for them. I think they're going to be out of their depth. They'll be lucky to leave the group with a point. As for who's going to win the group, obviously that comes down to either Germany or Portugal. Probably Germany. The thing about Germany is, 4 months ago, if you had asked me or anybody else, who's going to win the World Cup? Germany. Bang. Immediate decision made right there. Because they were so good. But one of the problems that they're having now is a lot of their players are either not fit, they're injured, or they're just not in form. They're not playing well. And I guess there's a lot of talk in Germany about, who's going to be our major source of goals, because really the only out-and-out striker that they're sending to the World Cup is Miroslav Klose, who's been in every World Cup since 1982. I'm not even sure I'm exaggerating on that. He's really old. I think he's almost 40. he does have a great reputation at the World Cup. He always seems to score goals, even when he, is playing for an awful club team, which he's not. He's playing for Lazio right now, or he was. Look it up. But anyway, yeah, I guess there's all kinds of questions surrounding this Germany team. So who knows? They're probably still going to win the group, and they might even still win the World Cup, though. So whatever. Then there's Portugal, who Cristiano Ronaldo. Hashtag. Yeah. That's an actual hashtag, by the way. Portugal are another team that's entirely reliant on one player, who's, granted, possibly the best player in the world. So they probably will get out of the group. I don't know. I'm tired. This video's too long. I'm just phoning it in right now. Then we've got the USA, led by former German great Heimo Janssen Schneider. I'm just kidding. That's a made-up name. He's not a real person. Jurgen Klinsmann. He is not known for being a tactical genius, but I think one of the things about Jurgen Klinsmann that a lot of people often overlook is how savvy he is about football culture. And that, I think, is the major reason that he wanted to tackle this U.S. national team project, is because here you've got the ultimate in terms of sports viewership, sports athletes in this country. I think he recognizes a tremendous potential for the U.S. to become a soccer country. Here's the problem. I was having breakfast at the Tavern, which is a popular local restaurant, my favorite place to go for breakfast. And I was sitting there, and I'm, of course, because I'm me, and all I think about is the World Cup when the World Cup is happening. I was sitting there, just thinking about the World Cup. There's this old dude sitting over to my left. We were at the bar. So I'm sitting next to this old dude who's reading the paper. His ringtone goes off. His ringtone, I shit you not, is Bedrock by Young Money. This is a 70-year-old man. And it just I know it's completely unrelated to soccer, but that's kind of the point, is that it was just a reminder that nobody gives a shit about soccer in this country. Yes, we're making great progress. Yes, there were people cheering in the streets after Landon Donovan scored that great goal against Algeria. But it's still a long way to go. Long story short, Jurgen Klinsmann understands that there's still a long way to go. Yesterday I saw on the ESPN ticker that he said to a journalist, I think it's unrealistic for the U.S. to expect that they can win this World Cup and the next World Cup or something like that. Anyway, his point was, it's a long way off. We're way behind everybody else. I would love to see this U.S. team get out of this group, but I think without Landon Donovan, that's going to be a challenge. I'm not Landon Cake's biggest fan, but the fact is he is a very technically gifted player, and he can provide really good assists. Josie Altidore is in terrible form right now. Clint Dempsey is always awful for the national team. I don't think we're going to get out of Group G. Finally, Group H. This is Russia, Belgium, South Korea, and Algeria. And a fifth team called the Republic of Ireland. That was a Thierry Henry handball goal joke. We're going to cut that one out. In editing, I have editing people who are going to take care of this for me. I'm a hotshot like that. This is a group that Russia and Belgium should win without too much difficulty. I know a lot of people really like Belgium to go very deep in this tournament. I'm not saying they're not going to, I just don't think they're as good as people think they are. I think the English press in particular, because so many of the Belgian players on the Belgian team are playing in the Premier League, that they have this extra exposure to Belgian players, like Courtois and, actually I'm not sure Courtois, I think he's at Atletico, not an English team. But anyway, players like Eden Hazard, for Chelsea, I think there's this big expectation that, these great players of the English League. They're going to do so well at the World Cup. And again, not saying they're not. I think the expectations have been overinflated, though. I expect Belgium to get out of this group without any difficulty, but I think they're going to finish behind Russia, who, Russia are that sort of wild card. They have a habit of choking. For instance, they didn't make it to the last World Cup because they blew it against Slovenia in a qualifier. It was actually kind of hilarious. But when they do make it to tournaments, they're capable of going deep, a la Euro 2008 when they made it to the semifinal. So I think Russia will get out of this group, which is fairly manageable, and I think they'll probably go as far as the quarterfinal, probably no further. Finally, rounding out the group, South Korea, who all their good players are now retired, and it's a pretty young team that's not going to do very well. And Algeria, who... there's this journalist named Philippe Auclair. He's a French guy. And I love what he said about the Algerian team. It's a bunch of French players who have random ties to Algeria, and they're not good enough to play for France. So it's like France's B team of Algerian immigrants. So I don't have great expectations for them there. We played them at the last, U.S. played them at the last World Cup, and they were pretty dismal, pretty awful. Hey, I made it over a half an hour. That's good, isn't it? Yeah. Well, you know what? If you did stick around with me this long, thank you. I'll try to put a TLDR warning in front of this video. Thank you for watching if you did make it this far. And if you did make it this far, then that means that you're as fanatical about this sport as I am. Listen, the World Cup, this tournament has shaped the world many times before, and it will continue to do so. I know soccer is not big in this country, but the World Cup has repercussions that go way the fuck beyond the sport of football. There was a war that happened between El Salvador and Honduras, and it's literally called the football or the soccer war. And it's because of a result that happened in World Cup qualifying back in, I think it was the 80s. So, like, there are a lot of political events that really do hinge on this tournament. This is a big fucking deal. It's the most important sports tournament in the history of sports tournaments. So, if you don't like soccer, that's fine. But at least tune in for a few matches, because this is it's incredibly important. And the ramifications of the things that happen in this tournament can really extend way beyond the game of soccer. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Adieu. France are going to win the World Cup. That's why I said adieu.